Hi, Marquita.
Hi, Deb.
Lovely
Hi,
to
Deborah.
see
Can I
you.
call you Deborah? That's so
You
hilarious.
sure? Hello, Marquita Davis.
Hello, Deborah Shine Valentine.
Hello. It's so lovely to be with you on this
Oh,
afternoon.
thank you. Thank you kindly. And I'm happy.
So we are here to talk a little bit about Feel Better, Do Better, the book. Often we're talking about Feel Better. Yes, that one. Often we're talking about Feel Better, Do Better Together, our group coaching program. And we love talking about that. And it's not completely disconnected from the book, but the book is its own special, amazing thing. And so I'm talking to you today, not as co creator of Feel Better, Do Better Together, but as one of 8 co authors of the book.
Yeah, I wrote something.
Yay! Yes, you did. Well, you've written many things, but lucky for us, one of them is in this book. So I'm just taking some time to talk to all of the authors so that people can get to know you and get to know more about your work in the book and what they might get out of reading the book, but also just so that they leave with some of your special magic just from listening to our conversation. Does that sound okay to you?
Yes, sounds okay.
All right, beautiful. So my first question is a very simple one, but when I contacted you about this project, what made you want to participate?
Um, my initial reaction was like, why was I asked? Because I felt like, what could I have to contribute? That was my initial thought.
Mm.
But in leaning into I recognize this is something that I wanted to do, like it was connected to something that I wanted to do, but particularly with this project, it was a chance to maybe offer somebody uh some kind of something to help them a little bit, because in coaching, we had coached some time ago, and although it took some time, I connect progress to just that little small shift in my thinking
Mm.
about things.
So, if just checking in to see if I'm hearing you right. So, the coaching you got from me when you were a client, because now you're
Yeah.
becoming a coach, but when you were a client and I was your coach, that there were some things that you took in that were really helpful. And that part of why you wanted to be a part of this book was to share some of those with someone else. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, yes, and I'll say what's unique about the book is because I recognize that a lot of times what besets a lot of us is our emotional connection to our problems. Um, when you're reading, we're not necessarily emotional, so it gives information, something like a clue, anything that it gives it room to be absorbed.
Mm.
um and it may touch on something, like it may say, oh, this fits there, because our brains are always working. So it's that part. It's that part, because you may not necessarily feel like you're one to want to be a world changer, but just by changing your own little personal space, that adds value to the world, not just your own life, but to the world.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love what you said about like a little bit of distance. You
Hmm.
know, some people aren't ready or don't want to or don't have the funds to invest
Hmm.
in the kind of one-on-one coaching that you and
Hmm.
I both do and have benefited from. But and
Hmm.
that was certainly part of my vision for this book was let's see if we can put some of what comes from doing this kind of one-to-one coaching work into book form so that it could be accessible really to almost anyone.
I'm so happy that you spoke to that point, because one of the reasons I wanted to become a coach was because during our interaction and in my own process, it was a lot of simple tools, but they were very powerful. And I somehow felt wrong. Like, why doesn't everybody know this? Like, this, it doesn't make sense that everybody doesn't get to know this. And we shared about how the economics of things can affect people's decisions to seek help or to get, you know, some kind of coaching or well, it's not therapy, but talk help.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, those are two different ways that you can get help, right? Like coaching is a way you can get help in the healing process, in the transformation process. Therapy is another way that has some specific aspects to it that might be perfect for some people in certain moments. Um, Acupuncturists can be helpful to healing and transformation. Massage therapists can be helpful to healing and
for
transformation.
sure.
So there's all these different ways.
Yes, and the great part about all of those different like modalities is that each touches on a different aspect of our being. Like we are mind, body, and spirit. So where we start to heal in one area, if we stay consistent with it, it will spread throughout our being. So sometimes we might find ourselves feeling successful in one or two dynamics of our lives, but truly when it can begin from the inside out and we can grow forward in ourselves, we can see our lives flourish in different areas at the same time. Not to say things don't come or things don't happen, but it's a much more secure container within here
Mm,
that I don't feel that what I hold most dear is threatened by all of those things out there.
yeah.
So, and because I feel safe in my being, I can be more responsive than reactive.
Mm,
And that's so great for, you know, especially as women, being able to think strategically about how we want to move in our lives, you know, whether it's work, even especially doggone dating these days. And you better have some thinking caps on, or, you know, parenting and things like that.
Anything involving other humans and big
Anything,
emotions.
yes, yes, yes.
Beautiful. Well, your chapter, which I consistently say is the funniest chapter in the book, um, all of the essays are beautiful. Well, I guess yours is an essay within a chapter. So the way the book is set up for people who don't know, there are 8 chapters, and in each chapter, a person who is Black, Indigenous, or a person of color wrote an essay because obviously, well, if you don't know me, you don't know how I identify, but I am very white in terms of my heritage and how I present. So we really wanted this book to have multiple voices and to be accessible and to be relatable to a wide range of people. So there are 8 different people who've contributed essays. And your essay is about the inner critic, which is one of the tools that gets used in a lot of coaching circles.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering what about that topic drew you to it? And is there one little tiny tidbit that you could give that people could take away with them related to that topic?
When the inner critic says you can't do something because you failed at it before, ask for receipts. Um, Ask for receipts, especially if it's something you never did, because that's when it tends to pipe the loudest. Oh my God, how could you? You never shut up. Shut up. Like, unless we have proof that I can't do it, then we're going to at least try.
All right, beautiful. And I use this term inner critic, which we use a lot in coachy world, but I'm realizing I didn't really define it. Not everybody's necessarily going to know what that is. So how would you define what the inner critic is for people who maybe don't know?
So the inner critic, a lot of us, I've learned that there are a few people who walk around that don't have inner chatter in their head, and they I call lucky ones. But we'll often, you know, if you read aloud, if you read to yourself, you may hear something, but also that same something when you want to try something. It'll say, "Oh, how could you do it? Ooh, remember that time?" Or the same voice will also sometimes encourage us to jump 10 feet into the water when we never even put on a bathing suit. It can, because of enthusiasm. So you can't necessarily either way for me proves you can't completely listen to it, right? You can observe what's going on about the present situation, because it's usually, if it's given a forecast of something, it's like connected to a doom and gloom of yesterday or a Scooby-Doo rainbow tomorrow, the likes of which no one has ever dreamed. And we're setting ourselves up for disappointment when we hitch our wagons to that one.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So, I'm
Without
hearing you
preparation,
talk.
yeah, that
Oh,
part.
go ahead.
I just want to say, without preparation, yes, with your dreams, you should dream as wildly as you possibly can. But the critic or that part will sometimes, hide the fact that there's work to do to get there.
Mm,
That part,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like it's a different, we might not always call it the inner critic when it's operating that way, but it's a different way that this kind of part of us that isn't really comfortable with us moving forward and
Mm-hmm.
changing can maybe undermine our ability to actually get there. So
Yes.
am I hearing that right? That's kind of my perspective, but I don't know if that's what you were
No, that's
saying.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so like sometimes, a lot of times for most of us, it's pretty harshly critical and like fearful. But sometimes, like you said, it sneaks around the other way and is like, oh, just go full force ahead. And then when that doesn't work, it comes
Never
in as the
try
critic.
again. Yeah, never
Yeah,
try again. See,
yeah.
I told you.
Yeah.
Never try
So
again.
it's coming back to like trying to get you to the place where you don't try again and where
Yeah.
you kind of think it's impossible. You're always going to be this way.
I would say that's probably the main goal is to of the inner critic's voice would be to convince us that change is either not worth trying because it's not necessary or it's not possible. It convinces us that good enough is just fine. It can even challenge us to say, "Oh, you should be so grateful. Why would you ever want to leave from this space?" But as we grow and learn and evolve and become bigger in ourselves, our lives will expand too, and we do ourselves a disservice when we shrink from that. Really.
Yeah. So if that is something that resonates with people who are listening, might be a reason to pick up the book and check out Marquita's Laugh Out Loud essay about her inner mean lunch lady, which is one of the forms. I just gave that little bit away, but her inner mean lunch lady is one of the forms that her inner critic takes. So you'll really enjoy that essay. Um, but I have a couple more questions for you. So the title of this book is Feel Better, Do Better, a guide for people who want to change the world, but sometimes have trouble making it to lunch. So my question for you is, if there's so much going on in the world, so much suffering, so much stuff to be concerned about, so many really big problems to solve, right? That feel heavy and hard. Why bother focusing on feeling better? Like, isn't that kind of frivolous?
For me, my joy is my armor. That is how I survive in the muck of all of that. You ever stand in line and it's a long line and you don't mind patiently waiting, like everybody's quiet, you might even be the fifth or sixth one back, but maybe person number two starts saying, "Oh man," like it doesn't take long before that murmur starts to pass through the line, and now maybe the poor cashier who's whatever, maybe trying their best, likely trying their best, is now inundated with all of this negativity. And my belief is that equal potential exists for joy to spread just as contagiously. So if if I keep enough stored up in me, then I always got enough to share. I can walk down the street and smile at someone. That's my contribution. I can say hello. I'm like, oh, I see you, and all of that helps. It keeps me moving in the right direction, at the very least. And often people will smile back, and that's something. So it sounds little and maybe frivolous, but it offers an interruption in what might have been a dull moment or a bad day for somebody. Being able to offer a form of kindness, even if it's just paying for somebody's coffee or something.
Yeah. Well, and if you've been on the receiving end, which probably all of us have at some point, of the person who gave you that extra smile or complimented your glasses
Mm-hmm.
or, did like surprised you and paid for your coffee and doesn't even know you or something like that. If you've been on the receiving end of that when you were having a rough day or you were feeling angry or you were feeling frustrated or discouraged, you know how that can shift you. And then
Mm-hmm.
when it shifts you, how much more energy do you have to do whatever the big hard thing is that maybe is in front of you?
Yeah, and I like the contrast of that, and the fact how the book mentions like people who want to change the world but have trouble making it to lunch. I like the fact that the book gives us small helpful things, because changing the world is so big, and then even if you chose to focus on one area of the world's problems, it could be an overwhelming thing to consider. But this book personalizes it, and giving us empowerment to take action in our own lives in small ways, and that those small successes will multiply like exponentially. So yes.
Yeah. So you talked about when you were talking about going out with joy and joy being your armor, you talked about when you are filled up with joy,
Mm-hmm.
then you're able to share that. And so I'm wondering if you could leave listeners with a couple of your favorite or most used, most powerful, whatever you want to share, a couple of your self care, joy filling tips that help you to keep returning to that space where you have some joy to offer, even as you are also aware of what it's like to live as a Black woman in the United States of America in 2023, which that in and of itself has plenty to work with without even watching the news or trying to change anybody else's life. So, how do you do it? How do you keep renewing that joy? Are there a couple things you could share that might be helpful to others as well?
Um, yes. And if we have time after I'm done, I don't think I said what I wanted to say about the other last question, but I'll try to
Well,
tie it all together.
you can which one do you want to do first? We're
The one
flexible
about
over
why
here.
bother feeling.
Yeah.
Um, Now, and I feel like this is important. It is definitely important to feel our joy. And this is where I have to say, as a Black woman, that is a tough thing to give myself permission to feel at times, especially with a sense of it directed towards myself. Because even if there aren't the things of the world, like before I'm aware of those things, I read the title of an article the other day that said most Black women, we think we're failing before we know we're suffering. We think we're just
Mm,
failing at life. Um, why can't I keep my house clean even though I'm taking kids to practice? I'm in school and I'm working, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, goddamn, how many hours is in the day? How many uses in that life? And because we don't want to fail. We want to be strong. We want to be capable. We saw our mothers capable, and as I say that, I now am aware, forgive me, Lexus, but this is why we had the phone number to where my mom would hang out on the wall on Fridays. You know what I'm saying? Now, as a child, I didn't know, but after having had my family, because that was the only time she probably got for herself, this gives us ways to introduce the concept at least, and also small practices to begin just playing with the idea of making enough space in your life for yourself. We do not have to be the master of everything we touch. And we can't. We can't. We're not able, and it's not because of any lack of strength or ability. It's simply because often the things we're trying to manage involve other independent people who don't give a shit about what we're trying to do. So their cooperation may not always be forthcoming. And we blame ourselves for that, or we want to be angry because rather than let go, we want to wrestle people's will rather than surrender it. So I would just encourage it. Like, we have to feel all the things. Because when you decide to say, okay, I'm not going to just suffer, I'm going to open myself up to joy. Before joy come in, all the other crap got to kind of come out. And this is definitely where I've been helped, because I'm not one that leans into those feelings easily. Absent somebody's corpse for me to cry over. What am I crying for? Used to be my belief. But the truth is, trauma don't always have to have a big T. It doesn't have to matter why your feelings were hurt to acknowledge the fact that they were hurt. And it doesn't even have to make sense. If at the end of acknowledging it, it still doesn't make sense, okay, and then forgive yourself for feeling away, because then that would be the next thing. Oh, I was dumb, I shouldn't have felt like that. No, you should have, because you did. And that's the thing. Like, there are no shoulds. However we are in this moment, we are just as capable of accomplishing as much, if not more so, when we channel that energy back here first. And we can do that without guilt. We can do that without worrying about failing anyone else, because the truth is, when we run ourselves in the ground, who's there? And we can't help anyone if we don't help ourselves first. And I don't want to say too much more, because then that would lead into the whole group program. But the fact that this is accessible to everyone really makes me feel grateful.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you clarified that, because when we say feel better, do better, we don't mean feel happy, happy joy all the time. We do mean, so we are talking about how you can cultivate your joy, but actually, paradoxically, part of how we cultivate joy is by feeling all the feelings, letting the anger come through and hearing what it has to say, because anger often is letting us know a boundary has been crossed, or there's an action that needs to be taken. It's feeling the tears and letting the tears move through. Tears, it's been found, actually have in them stress hormones, so they're literally taking stress hormones out of your body. Crying is helpful. So
if
like
I cry enough, it might do something about this cortisol around my midsection.
There we go. There we go. So, and also, we just will go on record as saying we also think all bodies are amazing.
Oh, for sure.
Amazing. And so we're working with all kinds of loving all of our kinds of bodies and challenging the messages that go around about how our midriffs should be or shouldn't be. And there is something to the cortisol connection, I think, with our bellies. So
that's it's a stress hormone. Like,
yeah,
when
yeah,
that's where it cleaves to the most.
yeah, yeah.
And we do welcome. I love myself in all forms. At my heaviest, I was 100 pounds more than I am, and I had to learn to love myself there. I had to learn to love myself there, like, completely. So I think that kind of ties into the part about numbing ourselves, because if you numb yourself to something, you don't get to choose what you don't feel. You just don't feel.
Yeah.
So
You just feel, you
and
don't
because
get
I
to
think
choose.
we don't get to
Sorry
choose,
for,
and I think sometimes it's probably a big tangent, but sometimes that can cause us to overgive because we find ourselves borrowing other people's enthusiasm for things, other people's joy and excitement for things. So we have to be involved. We have to be connected because that's where we get our feel good. But we ain't got to go out for what we got at home. We can feel good right in here and not have to borrow anything, and nobody can take it back because it's already ours.
oh my goodness, preach. Okay. So we need to wrap up here pretty soon. And I still want to see if you would like to leave people with a couple of your favorite self-care, joy-filling tips, a couple of things that they could take with them just from our conversation today. What do you do for you?
The mechanics of it tells me, like, if I can't just muster it to feel good, I've learned to kind of work the mechanics. I know that looking at something I find beautiful, and these days I'm grateful to say I can start in the mirror. That's right. looking at nature, spending time listening to music, some kind of pleasurable activity, hugging myself, because human contact is important to us for our our life. And doing a creative activity, writing it out. If it feels just too heavy in the moment, write it out. All the Phil Florence or whatever it is, cry it out. Give yourself permission to cry sometimes, because at the very least, if it's a vigorous cry, you're gonna have some endorphins when you stop. You're gonna think you feel good even if you don't. But it'll give us space to be able to come to an understanding that whatever that present moment is, when we arrive here, all is okay there. And as long as we got us, we got everything we need to move forward. That would be it. Remember that you are your best asset, the truest ally. That is it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marquita.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
lovely.
for being one of the authors of this book and for your partnership and all the things that we're doing together. For those of you who, well, probably most of you don't know, but Marquita and I met 20-ish years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, a little less than that. When our oldest sons were in elementary school together and were friends. And so we've been on quite a journey, and it's so exciting to now be colleagues and collaborators in addition to friends. So thank you so much, Marquita. I love you so much.
I love you too. And I can just pause and give you a couple of flowers as well to all the anyone of the dominant culture that may be viewing this. The woman in this video, Dr. Deborah Shine Valentine, does indeed put her money where her mouth is in sharing her privilege. She has extended the whatever comes with being associated, is named as a colleague to her for me, not just on the strength of my personality, but because she recognizes value everywhere she goes. She adds to the lives that she wants to touch, and she means what she says. So I am most appreciative about you because you saw, as most often is the case with people who undervalue themselves, potential there, or at the very least that I wasn't living at my full capacity. And you didn't just comfort me there, but you challenged me. And that's what got me over. So I appreciate you for taking the risk of that, because it could have been risky. But you did, and that's what a friend does. So I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we hope that many, many more of you find more and more of your own value and light on this journey, and that the book can be helpful.
Yeah, and nobody's off the hook, because privilege is intersectional. Where you got it, share it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.